Is this crazy? We stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in the history of Make America Great Again. How can you be against it?
The IRS, it collects our taxes, sometimes sends us refunds or asks for more money. And those federal taxes go to pay for government. Now, the IRS has a lot of our sensitive data. So why are Elon Musk and DOGE trying to access that data? What do they want to do with it? And why are they also trying to access personal information at the Social Security Administration? This is Sidebar from the Washington Post. I'm Libby Casey. Welcome. Today I'm with senior video journalist J.M. Rieger and special guest Jacob Bogage, congressional economics correspondent. So great to see you both. Welcome, Jacob.
I don't know how special I am.
You are our special correspondent today. Our buddies Rhonda and James are somewhere listening, so shout out to you, friends. So, Jacob, I'm going to read back to you the lead of your story you filed this weekend with Jeff Stein, because to me it reads like a Mission Impossible assignment or something. Elon Musk's U.S. DOGE service is seeking access to a heavily guarded IRS system that includes detailed financial information about every taxpayer, business, and nonprofit in the country. So, Jacob, first of all, what are these files? What's in this information?
It's I mean, you could just we could go around the table, and if you have your tax return, I could just take it from you now. I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about if you get an IRS tax refund, your bank information, your social security number, your personal tax identification number, your household, your dependents, and their information, the business you work for, your salary, your pay. I mean, everything financially that makes you, that's what this data set is. Everything that makes your company, your employer, your church, your nonprofits, all of these things have relationships with the IRS. That's what's in this data set. And I want to actually zoom out really quickly. We're not talking about one data set. It sounds like it, but we're not. We're talking about 60. 60. There are 60 case management systems in the IRS, and they funnel to this one thing called the IDRS. That is what they want access to. So think about all of that spread of information. That's what they want.
The IDRS, which I'm going to admit I did not know existed until I read your story, is closely guarded. The system is closely guarded. How so? What does that mean?
The level of access to the system is, I mean, you have to meet an incredibly high bar, right? Like, this makes security clearances look like child's play. The Social Security Commissioner, the IRS Commissioner does not have access to this. The Inspector General does not have access to this. The Treasury Secretary does not have access to this. The people who have access to this, it's the folks whose job it is to interact with taxpayers. So you work for the IRS, Libby. I call you, I have a question about my tax return. You have IDRS access, you pull it up, and there's all my information. That's it. This is a system built for bureaucrats, specifically to help taxpayers. Anyone with a remotely political connection does not get access to this.
So, JM, the administration told Jacob that their job and goal is to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. What is the logic or justification for accessing all this information that they're giving?
This is a broad effort by the administration and by Elon Musk to shrink the federal government broadly. That's what we're seeing with these layoffs and whatnot. But some of this information, and I'd love for Jacob to weigh in as well, but some of this information is they want to get a whole picture of everything going on, all the inner workings of the federal government. But I think what's really notable is so far, Elon Musk has defended a lot of these actions by saying, we're posting all of our actions publicly on the Doge X account. We're listing everything we're doing and all the waste, fraud, and abuse that we're finding and all the money that we're saving the U.S. taxpayer. So far, they are broadly overstating the savings and the fraud, if you even can call it that, because that's a very specific legal term. Maybe you might call it some of these things wasteful, but to call it fraud is even a step further. And they are broadly overstating what they're finding, saying they've found tens of billions, potentially hundreds of billions of dollars in savings here. In reality, they've really only found a few billion.
What have they said they want to do with this sensitive information, Jacob? Are they looking for people who are like scamming the system or something?
And this is the silliness behind this. This is the accounts receivable of the United States. If you're looking for like fraud or like improper payments or whatever, why are you looking at accounts receivable? Why are you looking at where people are giving you money? Unless you want to enact an incredibly invasive tax police state, right? Unless you want to really dig into that, there's no reason to have all that, to have access to something like this. I mean, the exasperation in my voice here comes from having had so many conversations with rank and file IRS employees, folks in IRS leadership, folks in the tax prep community who have who are losing their minds over this. And I keep saying I want to zoom out. This is like the fourth time today, not even with you guys, but just in around the newsroom, I've been like, I want to zoom out on this. We in the United States operate on a voluntary tax system. So you have to volunteer your information and your payment to the government. It is one of the most complicated tax systems in the world. Americans have one of the highest tax compliance rates in the world. So we make it really hard to pay our taxes, and Americans are still really good at it. So the idea that there is some granular waste, fraud, or abuse that you're going to find in the accounts receivable is silly. And if you really wanted to look at that, there are lots and lots of ways to access it without trampling over the privacy of 340 million people.
An element of irony here, Jacob, is that DOGE is also talking about laying off a bunch of IRS workers. Now, the IRS got extra funding during the Biden administration. The goal was to beef up everything from IT to personnel. And rolling those back would make cuts with the very notion of like trying to collect more taxes and make things a little more rigorous and tight.
So do you have the story up in front of you?
I do.
Can you do a Control F for Harrison Fields?
I will do it right now.
And read off his quote? Because I think it's really, there's something that's really telling.
In a statement, White House spokesman Harrison Fields told the Post, quote, "Waste, fraud, and abuse have been deeply entrenched in our broken system for far too long. It takes direct access to the system to identify and fix it. DOGE will continue to shine a light on the fraud they uncover, as the American people deserve to know what their government has been spending their hard-earned tax dollars on."
Okay, this is not a shot at Harrison, who, to his credit, stayed up late with me and Jeff Stein as we broke the story, and as we had reporting questions, was very professional and a great resource, and is a staunch advocate for the White House he represents. So this is not a shot at Harrison. That is such baloney.
Well, because it's accounts receivable. It's not.
Well, it's accounts receivable, but
you're also
like,
paying the money out to.
The argument there is that we don't know what's happening at the IRS, which is laughable. The IRS will tell you what their IT shortcomings are. They are very happy to volunteer that information. The Inspector General is very happy to volunteer that information. The National Taxpayer Advocate is very happy to volunteer that information. It's not like we didn't know that the IRS's systems were built with 1960s computer coding language. It's not like we didn't know it was going to take tens of billions of dollars to fix them. You can debate if that money is worthwhile. You can debate how to spend that money or how to fix it or what to prioritize.
Should it be outsourced by contractors?
Yeah, I mean,
should Elon Musk put in a bid and say he's going to do it all himself?
Yeah,
right?
that's
There's
fine.
all
That's
kinds of
great.
options, right?
Go do it. There's a million options. The idea that like, well, we needed to get inside to see what was going on. We all knew what was going on. Everybody knows what's going on.
There is a degree of this, both with the IRS, but with some of the other actions that DOGE and Musk have taken here, where they say, aha, look at this.
Yes.
And anyone and everyone who's worked in or around the federal government goes, yes, we've known that for years.
Congress has held hearings on it. It's it's openly
Social
discussed.
Security is a great example of this.
Yes.
And that's another thing that DOGE is trying to access, Social Security private information.
Can I talk about the vampire claims?
Please.
Okay, vampire claims. Elon Musk stands in the Oval Office and he says, we have found 150-year-olds getting Social Security. People around SSA call these the vampire claims now. It's very funny to me. Are you Team Edward or are you Team Jacob? We'll see if that makes the show.
Team Edward.
And there are two really easy explanations for this. One of them is the computer coding language was written in the 1960s. And if you don't have a birth date entered, it automatically enters the year 1875, which gives you an age, JM knows this, which gives you an age of 150. So there are a lot of people in this country who are older than the Social Security Administration when maybe they lost a birth certificate, there's a million reasons why somebody wouldn't have a birth date on file with the Social Security Administration. It's going to tell them they're 150 years old. The other reason is because you have the way benefits are structured. You can have like a head of household who dies and someone receives survivor's benefits, and then they get really old, right? So now you have a primary beneficiary who is deceased, who would be 150 years old, and then their child, who is now also very old, but is still getting those benefits, and therefore the benefits are listed in active pay status. These are very easy things to learn. This took 2 phone calls for me to learn. Elon Musk standing in the Oval Office and saying this stuff, it either shows that DOGE is not doing its homework or is misrepresenting deliberately what they found. There's no in between here.
Jacob, who is the software engineer that DOGE has put into place to try to access this sensitive data?
Yeah, Gavin Kleiger, who is younger than me, and I'm 30, which is great. Very accomplished individual. We love young people. He is like all over government. He just kind of gets deployed. This is a funny story, actually. He just keeps getting deployed to agencies, but no one tells those agencies he's showing up. So like Thursday afternoon last week, he arrives at the headquarters of the IRS while IRS is on the phone with the White House saying someone's showing up. And then all of the senior executives just kind of come down to the lobby and are like, hi, we just heard about you. Like, what are you doing here? What's your job? There's like a whole like hullabaloo about like what conference room to put him in. Like, they have to get him a swipe badge. They have to get him an email address, let alone access to like the most sensitive consumer financial data in the country. I mean, it's like this level of kind of chaos. And he's done this at like multiple agencies.
And so we'll be tracking, of course, like lawsuits and other big legal questions about just how privileged he is or allowed he is to access that information without clearances, JM.
Yes. And this is one of many open questions right now is what is going to happen or is not going to happen at the court. But broadly, this is an effort by Trump and Musk to really just try and consolidate and oversee and do kind of what they want to do without oversight.
The move fast and break stuff that we're talking about, I just want to make clear to people who are listening to this that like we don't have opinions on that, right? Like those are policy things that the American people elected Donald Trump and this is what he's doing, right? The exasperation, I keep coming back to that word, is there's an incredible amount of expertise that the country has relied on that we're reporting is just kind of getting thrown out the window. Again, that's not for us to judge whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's an objective fact that this stuff has been useful in the past. and that while we're reporting, we see real-time consequences of it.
And one critique is if you really want to find waste, fraud, and abuse, like there are people in these agencies who can say, I can point you in the right direction. I can show you the research we've done. I can show you the studies that we presented to Congress. Like there is information already out there. Stay with us here on Sidebar, because when we come back, we'll talk about one of the things that the Trump administration tried to move fast and break stuff on and then realized how very dangerous that was. And we're talking about the National Nuclear Security Administration. Stay with us. This is Sidebar from The Washington Post. I'm Libby Casey. A reminder, you can watch us on YouTube. Just look for The Washington Post. And you can see Jacob, JM, in all their glory here. And when Jacob has his exasperation, you can really see it on your face, as well as the exhaustion, because the teams here have been reporting around the clock, trying to break these stories and follow things. There are so many layoffs happening at different agencies. It's been very chaotic. Some of it has been done in sort of almost ways that don't seem believable. Like if you get one of these messages, I'm sure people are like, this can't be real. They misspelled my name. They don't have my agency right. But great reporting by our colleagues revealing just how many jobs across the country are being hit. Because JM, there are federal workers all over the country, right? People think of this as a DC story. It is not a DC story.
No, there's folks in places all over the country, a lot of whom don't live in the DC or the DMV area of Maryland, Virginia. And they do things that we were talking earlier about, how there's a degree here where Musk and his team are going in and saying there's kind of an aha moment over and over again that they are presenting as in, look at this thing we found. And folks who work in the federal government, folks who rub shoulders with the federal government and all its operations throughout the country have known about these things. And we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. There are things called inspectors general inside these agencies, and part of their job is to look at those things.
So on Friday, employees of the National Nuclear Security Administration were fired. Their email addresses were deleted, and bye-bye. But then what happened?
So Musk and his team at DOGE go into this nuclear security component of the Energy Department and lay off hundreds of workers. About 24 hours later, they realize they need those workers back. These are
Why? Why, JM?
What could they possibly need?
These are folks who are working on nuclear warheads, who are working on radioactive waste, who are working on the security and management of the United States nuclear weapons arsenal. These are folks, we were just talking about how spread out these are folks in Texas. These are folks in South Carolina. These are folks in Tennessee. These are folks in Washington State, all across the country. And some folks lost email access before they were even notified that they were laid off. So it was really a chaotic scramble to then rescind those notices, pull those workers back in. And I think what it really encapsulates is how chaotic this entire thing has been at agency after agency after agency. Musk and his team are following that tech playbook of move fast and break things, but it has really created some significant holes and chaos. And this was really not only one of the more recent examples, but one of the more notable examples of when we talk about national security.
Other agencies that have lost staffers?
Yeah, so other agencies that have lost staffers, IRS is a great example. They sent out this notice saying, the fork
in the road.
The fork in the road, right? You can
make your choice.
You can quit and we'll pay you out. You can retire early. You can whatever. They sent all that out. And then they say, just kidding. Some of you, we really need you for tax filing season. You need to stay. And there have been similar messages that have gone out, right? They said this won't touch national security. Well, they sent it to people who prepare nuclear submarines at Navy, docks and Navy shipyards. They said it won't touch immigration. They sent it to all the immigration judges. So completely haphazard. They don't know where things are. They're opening every cupboard and they're just kind of pulling things out.
Okay, so we'll pull the things out, but then you can put it back in, right?
No, that's not how it works. When you offer someone this, they can take it and they don't have to come back. They don't have to come back. So we, as a government, lose that expertise, that capability, and we now have to compete for that person in the job market. The move fast, break things, cut the size of government. If you want to cut the size of government, there's a way to do that. It's called the Congress of the United States.
The what?
Yes, because they don't do anything.
Well, I'm not saying they don't do anything, but they have been quiet during this process.
And
On the
that's-
Republican
yeah.
side of the aisle, Democrats expressing outrage, having protests, trying to get people interested and invested, but Republicans are not fussed at this point.
And that's where I spend most of my days. I spend most of my days at the United States Capitol chasing lawmakers around and working sources there. And Congress controls the power of the purse, right? They set funding priorities. They spend trillions of dollars every year. If you want to shrink the size of government, go through Congress and you say, well, this year we're not giving the nuclear safety people as much money. So make decisions about who you want to keep.
Can I just play some tape here real quick, JM? I want to this question of like Elon Musk trying his best, move fast, break things. Maybe some things we'll have to put back together with some duct tape or glue. Let's listen to how he talked about it in the Oval Office recently.
The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. Some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes.
That's Elon Musk speaking in the Oval Office last week. Donald Trump at the desk, Elon standing up. A lot of questions here about, what is Elon doing in there, having these press conferences, talking to journalists in a place that usually is reserved for the president to speak publicly.
I mean, I've never been to the Oval Office, but if I did and I wore a hat, I could just imagine my grandmother going, "Who do you think you are?"
Well, when you get in that room, Jacob, we'll make sure you
Yes, I'll call you and I will not wear a hat.
No hats allowed.
No hat.
So this is how Musk is talking about his role, right? In sort of baseball terms of like nobody bats 1,000.
Sure, that's fine. No, I mean, he's right. Nobody bats 1,000.
So this brings us full circle to the idea, though, of you break it, you figure out what's necessary, and bring it back, JM.
I think it's a remarkable comment to make as they are laying off hundreds, thousands of federal workers who are working on all these things that we've laid out. And by the way, they are working on things. The Energy Department's in the middle of a multi-hundred billion nuclear modernization program. The IRS, you just mentioned earlier, has brought in all these resources to up tax enforcement, which the Congress passed. These are things that are in place, and what they're trying to do, they being the administration, they being Musk, they're trying to basically do a go-around around things that are in law. They're trying to see how far they can push things, how much they can consolidate executive power here to make cuts, because again, they are working off this premise of there is wide, in their words, waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. Even if you take the government does keep track of this, and they estimate that it's anywhere from around $200 to $500 billion a year in government spending is wasteful or abuse or fraud. That is a fraction of 1% of all federal spending. Federal government spends roughly, $5 trillion a year?
6 trillion.
6 trillion a year. So that's a fraction of 1%. I don't know anyone in the Congress who is saying that they should not go after and combat that waste, fraud, and abuse. But this idea that this is Trump has presented this as, and we're going to make such a dent in the federal deficit, and this is going to bring prosperity to the country. The idea that cutting $1 billion here or $1 million here is going to broadly lead to vastly reduced deficits is just factually inaccurate.
I want to share some of the other places that have seen workers laid off: the FAA, FEMA, the Forest Service, people like park rangers, even cancer researchers laid off. Jacob?
I'm just nodding along. I mean, yeah. How many plane crashes have we had since January 20th?
Mm-hmm.
I reported on the DCA crash from midair. I was on a plane coming in behind it. We were diverted to BWI and, bought and expensed the in-flight Wi-Fi and started reporting.
It really hits home. Airline safety.
There is a fundamental denial here that the government plays a role in our economy, which, as we start seeing these layoffs, we're going to feel the effects of.
And then it will be up for the American people to decide. JM?
Yeah, and I just, one other thing I think is important to point out as we kind of wrap our heads around everything that's going on and everything that Musk is trying to do. There was an effort in the Reagan administration to shrink government, to
This
go
is the
in.
Grace Commission.
Exactly.
Yes.
To go in and say, what can we get rid of here? What can we start to shed? And it was broadly a failure. It didn't do all that much. Some of this from Musk, from Trump world, is an effort, I think, to go in so quickly and go before other checks can kind of come in so that they can have some effect or impact. Now, obviously, we are in wait and see mode depending on what Congress does, what the judiciary does. But I think that's some of what we're seeing. And then some of it, again, is a repeat of sort of that tech playbook that we've been talking about.
Jacob Bogage, J.M. Rieger, thanks so much to both of you. This is a story that we're going to keep continuing to tell, and we're really grateful for you to be here, Jacob.
Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
J.M., I will see you on Thursday for our next episode of Sidebar from the Washington Post. A reminder, you can listen to us on your favorite podcast app or find us on YouTube. Just look for Washington Post. Talk to you Thursday.